which after a harrowing drive, we did find a really, really beautiful hotel on the top. It happened to be, if you remember that like crazy eclipse last summer that you couldn't see in North America. Well, we happened to be in like, again, Oman was like this like blessed thing for us. And like everything worked out. There's a food festival, there's a really cool eclipse that you can only see in a few places in the world. And this mountaintop in Oman was one of them. And so it was, I think that was the blood moon?
It was the blood moon.
It was like the blood moon, crazy eclipse, and we saw all of it from the top of the mountain in Oman.
Yeah,
So
randomly, we didn't expect this. We knew it was happening, but we started to look into where the best places in the world were to see the blood moon, and we were actually kind of at the epicenter of where you should be, and we happened to be on a mountain that night. So
on the day, I'm telling you,
in a place with no light pollution, so we really could have asked for more.
it was really
Totally planned.
The hotel up there, I'm sure there's more than one. The one we stayed at was absolutely like mesmerizing. But in addition, it was just such a magical night. And so I think the fact that now we're already on like this second completely different place with this different climate, also much cooler up there, and totally beautiful, just speaks to like in 1 week how much you can do in this country. Then fast forward, we get off the mountain, harrowing drive yet again, and we end up in the village of Alhambra, where we were recommended, and I know this is kind of an old, it's a museum, technically like a living museum, and we had these beautiful women who, in this very hot house, literally started a fire on the floor to show us how they would cook, or how they would toast coffee beans, made us coffee, made everything for us that day, but on the floor of this very like ancient home. This is me attempting to grind wheat for flour. We didn't get very far, so we did not use that particular flour in anything, but I have really an appreciation for how it was done. They even have fun, like kind of traditional garments that we were able to dress up in. We were there most of the day cooking and then had this feast afterward. This was the end product, where again we had one of the more stew-like dishes with chicken. Do you remember everything we had there?
They had the tuna, so they did similar to the Shua spice I was mentioning before, the Omani spice blend. They use that to season tuna, and they fry whole pieces of tuna in oil, which is a really interesting cooking method that I've never seen before. They also she did a chicken dish with once again, a minor variation of that same spice used for the seafood. We had a big rice platter. Our inspiration for what we call the Omani salad at the restaurant, which is a mix of the things I mentioned they get served with the shua, are all kind of served separately. So you have a raw pile of cabbage, cut limes, hot green chilies, tomatoes, and cilantro. So the idea being you kind of grab at each thing, both as a palate cleanser, but also as a way to add flavor to the meal, which we preach big time at the restaurant. But it was amazing. One of the best meals we had by far.
And the women worked so hard with no running water, no nothing. It was pretty amazing.
And one really cool dish that you'll also see on the menu, I may pronounce this incorrectly, but baklawat fukur. I'm not quite sure if I'm saying that right. But they made this really amazing bread, very similar to the one they use for chips Oman. But she cooked it over top of a little plancha, but on the fire that she built literally on the ground, on the second story of this home. And it's extremely easy. It's the bread itself, and then they use fresh date molasses, which Alhambra had the most amazing dates I've ever tried in my entire life. We actually were walking and picking them off the trees, and it was mind-blowing. I thought I knew what a date tasted like, and I had no idea. But they used fresh date molasses and butter and the bread, and that was it. You literally just cook it down and use a spatula and stir it and stir it and stir it and add a little bit more molasses, a little more butter, and then you eat it with your hands. And it was you drink tea with it, and it was the most unbelievable thing. So we'll have that on the menu for the event as well, with Lebna ice cream on top. So
it was delicious. I helped it out.
Yeah, that was one you did.
I was allowed to stir that one. Yeah. And again, another picture to demonstrate how quickly we changed environments. So now we're in the desert. Do you know how hot this sand is? Like, it goes through your shoes, in case you're wondering. Like, we had shoes on and could not stand. You see me like kind of awkwardly posing because my feet were on fire. I took a picture and I ran back to the car. But Felicia set up a meeting with the Bedouin family to cook for us. So again, now we've gone through markets and cities and mountains, and now we're in the desert. And this all happened in like 7 days. And while we moved quickly, I still think we experienced all of these places pretty completely. We spent, sure, early mornings and late nights, but everything was really easy to get to. And I think this experience was really cool because, I mean, the landscape was amazing. This is where I had to be the mom, and I was not letting anyone do the driving through the dunes thing. I'm the only girl on this trip, right? And all the guys are like, yeah, we're gonna ride these SUVs through they even pump their tires differently, and I put an end to that. It terrified me. Like, what would you call it? Like sand? I don't even know.
Dune bashing.
Yeah, that's terrible.
It was really fun.
Yeah, they're all mad at me.
I was in the car behind her with our partner Andy, who's the one on the right here, and she was in the car with her husband David, who I have my arm around. And we took off. They took some of the air out of the tires, and we took off. And I was like, oh, I know what's about to happen. You actually have to keep speed because the sand can be so deep in certain areas. But I told them to kind of let it loose a little bit, and they were definitely having some fun. And their car slowed down significantly, and we pulled up, and Rose was like, "No more of that. We're done."
My poor husband.
I was like a little kid being like, "Come on, one more."
Yeah, and I'm thinking about how I have to call his wife if we die in the desert. And I'm also like, we can't even walk on the sand. It's so hot. So this is where we're right now. So anyway, I would go back and maybe be more mentally prepared for it. But
this is another shot from right by Jebel Akhdar, so on the way back down the mountain. One cool thing about that, so it's called the Green Mountain, and this time of year specifically, all of the orchids and roses come into, is it orchids? I know it's
Mainly the roses.
mainly the roses is the big attraction, but the roses are about that big, they're huge. And you can see them normally actually in the background of this photo, you'd be able to see them, but we just missed them. But a really cool thing to go see if you're heading to Oman as well.
so within 48 hours, we saw these two sceneries. But we really loved our day, and the desert was a really special experience. The family, again, they just welcomed us into their homes, not knowing who we are, and made this amazing meal for us, and taught Chris how to wear a headscarf, which was also very helpful for how hot it was.
That's our driver, Saif, and he and I became buddies. And we stopped at a mall randomly to get like Advil and water at some point, and he disappears. And I was like, has anyone seen Saif? We were supposed to be leaving, and he comes out and he got me that as a gift, so it was quite cool.
That's very sweet. But this is the meal that we made with the Bedouin family, who are camel breeders. And the kids, I mean, like in that picture, there's even like the little cane that they used to like herd the camels. Those kids were working, but in between hosted us and made this amazing dish with their mom and grandma and their aunts. I mean, there's like the whole family came out to cook for us. Do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I mean that's
This
more.
isn't on the menu right
This
now.
is the bread I was mentioning that we've seen kind of on repeat. Really thin, flaky bread, but really works well with all the stewed dishes and the salads, kind of building everything in your hand, dipping in from one thing to the other. The children were particularly fun to spend time with, as they were just shocked entirely as to why we were there, and who this strange man was that was sitting in their living room. But the food was excellent. That was actually one of the best meals we'd had, and they spent hours preparing for us, which like we said, everywhere we went, everyone was so welcoming, and
this
kind of just went above and beyond.
And we should say, like, it is more maybe a little bit more conservative in the desert as well. And for a family to trust us so much to just kind of let a bunch of Americans in and a bunch of like American dudes in their house was just amazing. And it was really cool. I was invited in to sit with the women after dinner, and then it was just a really cool experience to kind of be allowed into that space. And they had so many questions, like, which one's your husband? And why don't you have any children? And like we got real. But it was just such a cool cool, because it wasn't like Muscat where I think there's more tourism, right? Like this was definitely, we might have been the first Americans I ever met. So it was a really cool experience to be able to do that. And I think, yeah, these dishes they're delicious. A lot of chickpeas, and we were talking beforehand, dango is currently on the Maydan menu and is like one of the most popular dishes in the house. This is not it, but it was just the appreciation for the chickpea.
Yeah, we had.
Do you remember the ingredients in this one?
In that one, I mean, I could guess. I'm not quite sure. It looks like there's definitely turmeric. It looks like chickpeas, shallot, maybe. I can't quite tell, to be honest. I have to look back at my notes. But the dango is a dish that we had. I don't think it's photo over here, but you'll see at the restaurant. It's one of those things that just speaks volumes about all the places that we visited, particularly Oman, where it's 5 ingredients, insanely simple but beyond delicious. It's literally just butter, garlic, lime juice, a little bit of dried chili, and chickpeas. And it is, to this day, one of the best bites of food I've ever had in my life. I think we do a decent job of recreating it at the restaurant. But when you have it there, once again, it's kind of hard to beat because of where you are.
Yeah, I don't think we ever caught the name of this, but while it's a simple dish, like Chris is saying, this was also one of our, I mean, we liked all our, I'm trying to say that they're all our favorite because this one was
They were all equally different, but technique-wise, everything was, also pretty different, which was fun for me. In this particular instance, they actually allowed me to go into the kitchen with the matriarch of the family and cook, which was super special. She was covered, but for me to be able to do that was definitely a big ask, but they were really happy to once they found out why we were there, and we all got to hang out with them, and it was really, really special.
So switching from the desert, and now we're back in Muscat, and this family was from Zanzibar. There's a woman named Rama, and the daughter of the owner of the home, who Chris is getting notes from, did her education in London, spoke perfect English, and her family owns a Zanzibari restaurant in Muscat. But they invited us to their house to teach us the influence of Zanzibar on Omani food, which again, this theme of immigration and people moving back and forth was fascinating, and they tell their stories through the food. So I don't think I have never had food from Zanzibar. I've sadly never been there. This is one of the woman with the yellow veil. She cooks in the restaurant, but they made us this huge feast. And one of the dishes at Compass Rose, Machicha Wanazi, that we learned from this woman, is also one of our most popular dishes. It's vegan, it's made of coconut milk, but it's really creamy. He and I were eating after this meal was prepared. We sat at the table, and with like one bite, we just looked at each other like, we have to have this on the menu. And it's on the menu at Compass right now. So again, just so special. Another big find. She had appreciation for Western food and the food of Oman and Zanzibar. So she was a huge resource as far as helping us with ingredients and as far as the history of her family having left Oman years before the Sultan. The current Sultan took over. So they went to Zanzibar. The way she explained it was then once he came into power 40 years ago?
50 years next year.
50, I'm sorry guys, my numbers are a little off. The family came back and has been living happily there, running their business ever since, but just sort of explained that some people did that when there wasn't as much of an economy. And would we ever have known that? No. We missed that in history class in American schools. Didn't get to that part. So such an education, and then able to kind of bring those stories into the restaurant. So at Compass Rose, all the servers know it says Zanzibar on the menu, the country associated with it, but we explained that we learned it in Oman. And so it's just kind of a little bit of a history lesson that everyone gets.
And it's also definitely just provided more of a reference for us in terms of where ingredients come from. Southern in Salalah, you start to see more of the tropical notes, things that I consider to be tropical, at least in that part of the world. And then Zanzibar, the introduction of coconut, more, still the usage of dates and things of that nature, but you have coconut palms, you have banana trees, you have all sorts of different things that you see used, that we saw cooked this evening, an amazing meal. And it was really interesting just to hear her story.
And then the next day, we go to the home of a family that's from Burundi. A very similar story of being born, this woman's relatives being born in Oman, leaving, going to Burundi, coming back, And this was in her home. They don't have a restaurant, but Crystal speaks to this really cool technique she had for making bread, which is what they're doing there. But I think we were constantly impressed by being in a country where everyone was so different in so many different places and lived so harmoniously together. Like, you didn't feel any tension, and I think myself, I just got back from Lebanon last week, visiting relatives with my family, and even within like a couple days, there's like, they tried to assassinate a minister, and before you know it, the streets are like full of military, and like that's kind of unfortunately really common in Lebanon. And a lot of the other countries that we visited, as much as we love them, like it's always up or down. It was really cool to see everyone get along. At least that's how it felt. And we're not scholars of the political climate in the country, but I think just as tourists, it just felt really cool. Being in Beirut last week, you could tell that the minute there was a dispute, like the entire city changed. People were off the streets, the military was very present, and it just felt bad. And I think in Oman, it was just really cool to see so many different cultures just coexist and eat together. So. We had some time for shisha. What do we call it in Oman? Shisha? No, the smoking in the watermelon?
It's something done in Oman, but not nearly as popular as it is in other countries.
Oh, yeah. Well, our driver found it. The same driver that does the dune bashing found the hookah, that's the word I was looking for. So just a really popular cafe, definitely a little bit more modern than some places that we went, but it was just a really nice end. This was almost at the end of our trip. One of our last meals was actually like a Yemeni-inspired restaurant, which again, I can find the name for you. It was delicious. And kind of this is what most of our tables looked like the whole time that we were there, and that was, I think, our last day.
It was our last day.
So our drivers took us here, and just the convergence of food from Yemen and food from Oman kind of overlapping. So it was really delicious. And we thought we'd end with our drivers, because you heard they were like a constant theme. They took us safely through the country.
Salem and Saif, and I still actually keep in touch with them both on WhatsApp. Just like we were playing back the video messages earlier. They're very, very sweet. And then Saif, the one on the left, still is planning to come visit me in the United States, so we're actually working that out right now.
So they definitely functioned as tour guides and ambassadors for the country and gift givers. I went back with so much frankincense and so many scented oils. They were super generous, and I think that was kind of how we felt through our entire trip. So we hope we did it some justice. But we can't without, spending all day here and showing you all of our pictures. But we hope if you have any questions about visiting, food, I think we can take a couple.